I had a community that, it might be dramatic to say, saved me. And so if I can be that for other people and my podcast can do that for other people, then I'm all for it. I mean, one of the reasons that I got divorced was because of a podcast, because I was going through a really tough time and I listened to a podcast where somebody was talking about their experience, and oddly it was the man talking about his experience, and just something clicked, and it's a conversation that I never would have had with a friend or a family member. So I think my podcast and my career are really about how do we make connections for people so that they can make the most informed decision about whatever it is that they want to do in their lives.
Isn't that amazing that you can have that moment, as you mentioned, with someone's podcast? And I'm assuming you didn't know this person
No,
hosting a
no.
podcast. But imagine, like, take a minute and imagine what you went through,
Yeah.
right? And how your experience was. How much would you love to have someone listen to your podcast and have that same moment?
And that's it. And that's exactly it. That's exactly why I do what I do. And so the people that I interview, they're people from a variety of careers. So hopefully somebody that will listen to the Wise and Wine podcast, if the, you know, deep sea scuba diver is not something that you connect to, well, maybe the actor is somebody that you connect to, or the professional rugby player, or the Behind the Shades podcast host. You know, you never know. So I like having a variety of guests. And, you know, my current partner will listen to my podcast and sometimes will be like, that one wasn't for me. And I get it. Not every guest is going to tap into every person, but if there's one episode where somebody goes, oh, I heard the plus size scuba woman say this, and now I'm not afraid to go scuba diving, or I heard the woman who works for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers professional football team, how she got into that industry. I, I had never considered it, but maybe it's something I'd want to do. Like, that's really my goal and my hope, is that some episode speaks to somebody at some point in some time, and it helps them clear up a professional decision that they want to make for themselves.
Do you look at the world differently now that you've heard all these stories? Because for you, you're dealing with people who are diverse, right? You're probably coming into contact with all these women. You mentioned you're speaking to people of color.
Mhm.
Hearing these stories, how do you view the world now? The same, differently, or is it just you're just continuing the journey and learning as you go?
I think it reminds me, and hopefully people that listen, that no group of anybody is a monolith, and that my experience as a Black woman is very different than the experience of this other Black woman who's an artist and a tattoo artist, and she's, you know, making some social justice change in, you know, North Nashville. So we all have different stories, and I think that's really why we're here. We're here to be heard. We're here to leave an imprint and an impact. And there's nothing people love doing more than to tell you their stories. I mean, the coolest thing about my podcast is I rarely get told no. Sometimes I'll shoot my shot with somebody who's above my pay grade and they're like, girl, no. But for the most part, people are just like, you want to hear my story? And they're so flattered that you asked. And of course, I want to hear your story. It's a story that I'm not familiar with. You know, even when you and I talked, you had so much experience about growing up with your grandmother. And I don't, you know, I've been to Toronto once. And so getting some insight about that, or even just, you know, how you even started your podcast. So I just am partially nosy, but also am just inspired by people and their stories.